So today we're going to learn how to correctly pour plaster so that you can make your plaster carvings. Before you begin, you want to cover your work area with newspaper. This will help you in cleanup because plaster is difficult to clean up, especially as it begins to dry. You will need to have brought from home a container of some sort to pour your plaster into. We have a 2-liter bottle here. It could be a milk carton or any number of things, but it should be large enough to create an area to pour your plaster. To begin, we're going to cut the top off of whatever we brought. You may be using an X-Acto knife or a scissors, whatever works best for you. I'm going to start this with an X-Acto knife. I'm going to set my X-Acto knife down, out of the way, and I'm just going to continue it with the scissors because once I get the opening started, it's a little easier. And I'm going to just throw that away. It needs to be big enough to get your hand inside because you just want to make sure that you can pour and get your hand inside there. Then I'm going to fill my container a little more than halfway full with water. I don't want to fill it to the top because if I add plaster, then it'll overflow. So a little more than halfway full, somewhere between halfway and 3/4. So it's about this full with water. I will need a bucket to mix plaster in. I cannot mix it directly in my container. So I take the water, the correct amount, I pour it in my bucket, and I bring my container over to where I will pour it eventually. Now only 2 or 3, maybe 4 people can mix plaster at a time because otherwise it's just too crowded here. So you'll have to take turns when you do this. Next step is we're going to take the plaster of Paris and we're going to put it into the bucket. But we don't want to just pour it all in. The correct amount is whatever amount of plaster you need to make an island in here, to make the plaster come up above the water. So I'm going to scoop plaster and I'm going to sift it through my fingers. That just kind of breaks it up a little bit. I know at the beginning it's just going to quickly sink in. Just sift it a little bit. Okay, now as I look inside here, it's beginning to make an island. I believe that island will probably sink, so I think I'm going to get one more bucket full or one more container full. I want to make sure that it's staying above. And that island looks like it's staying above. I'll give it a second to see if it settles. And this island is good. It's staying above. Now I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to begin to stir the plaster. I'm going to stir the plaster and I'm going to break up all the lumps in here. And this may take a couple of minutes. The plaster will begin to feel like it's getting a little bit thicker as I do this. It should be creamy and thick. I want the plaster to be as smooth as I can with no lumps in it. So I've still got lumps in here. As I feel them, I need to break them up with my fingers, my hands. And there's no way to do this without sticking your hand inside of the plaster and just simply breaking them up. You can't do it with a spoon or a tool. You have to do it with your hand. Okay, they're beginning. I do believe I have them all broke up. The plaster is smooth. You can see it has some thickness to it. And I'm going to take my bucket over to my container. You may do this with somebody assisting you to help you hold the container. You certainly don't want the container to tip over as you pour it. I pour it in, and if you look at this, you can see that the amount of water I have in there, and the amount of plaster brings it pretty much to the top. You cannot stop and re-add more water and plaster to this because it makes a chemical reaction. It connects. Once I get it in there, I'm going to do a little bit of tapping. This will bring bubbles to the surface so they're not throughout the sculpture. And as I do this, I can see bubbles popping and coming to the top. Then I'm going to allow that to harden overnight because we have to let it harden before we can carve it. You may notice tomorrow when you come that there may be a little bit of water on the surface. Some of the water will come to the top. Now, plaster should never be poured directly into the sink. So if I have extra plaster, if I made a little too much, I must get as much as I can into the garbage can. If it goes into the sink, it will clog it. And then when you clean, you want to use plenty of water. Plenty of water. Clean the bucket out for the next person. And then allow plenty of water to run down the sink so that nothing clogs. Any plaster residue goes all the way through the pipes.